Welcome everyone to this Timber Development UK webinar on measuring and trading stored carbon in your timber buildings. Welcome. My name's Charlie Law. I'm your host for today. I'm Sustainability Director here at Timber Development UK. For those of you that are new to Timber Development UK, we're a trade association for the timber industry with over 1,000 member businesses spanning the whole supply chain from sawmill to specifier, with a reach of around 20,000 people in our network. So we talk to a lot of people in the industry. Today, we're joined by Andrew Cohen from One Click LCA, who's going to explain the biogenic carbon, how to measure biogenic carbon in your buildings and how that can be measured in accordance with things like EN 15978 and the RICS Professional Standard version 2, which came out last year. So welcome, Andrew. We've got Dougal Driver and Rachel Lawrence here from Grown in Britain, and they're going to talk about the latest on the stored carbon certification scheme that's been developed by Grown in Britain. And then we've got Sol Naim, who will explain how in the future this could be used to obtain finance through companies like theirs, like Timber Finance, which will be able to, maybe able to help finance your buildings going forward. We will have a short presentation from each of our members, so about 10, 15 minutes at the most, just to explain what they're doing, and then we'll have plenty of time, hopefully, for questions at the end. So please, can you make sure you put your questions in the Q&A, and we'll ask them to us, ask our panel questions at the end. We'll have a quick poll though first. I'm just going to launch this one. If you can let us know how many of your current construction projects are you measuring embodied carbon. So if you can just sort of click just to see where we are with this at the moment. And it's great. So there's loads coming in, which is good. Okay, we're seeing it slowed there. So I'll end the poll there so we don't too far, and then share the results. So hopefully you can all see them. So then over it's quite a split really. So about a third of you are not measuring at all. Another third are sort of measuring some of your projects, with another third sort of measuring all or the majority of them. So quite a split there, and no surprises there, I think. But that's good to know, and that gives our panelists here a bit of an idea of where you are and the experience of the people here. So that's great. So I'll stop sharing that, and I'll hand over to let's just turn that off. Right. And I'll hand over straight away to Andrew. So Andrew Cohen is he's the UK and I business development lead from One Click LCA. And he's going to give you an introduction to the One Click LCA tool. So over to you, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. Really looking forward to hearing from Dougal, Rachel, and Sol later as well. That poll is very interesting too. I thought more people would be measuring embodied carbon, so that was quite interesting to see that at the start. Thanks, Charlie. Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Andrew Cowan. I'm from One Click LCA, and today we're going to explore how to measure embodied carbon and stored carbon in line with the RICS Professional Standard version 2. For those of you that don't know us, One Click LCA is the world's leading digital platform for life cycle assessment and environmental product declarations, EPDs. That's right across the construction value chain. We're used in over 170 countries. It says 250,000 data sets, but we've recently acquired a company called Sustainably. So we've actually doubled that now. So if you've heard of SEMA Pro before, that now falls into One Click LCA. And yeah, you can see some of the numbers in terms of the types of the number of architects and contractors and manufacturers that we're working with now globally. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. So this is obviously bad. What you see here are the kinds of images that we see in the news every day. They're caused by extreme weather events and natural disasters. This is the impact of climate change caused by human activities, and that's things like burning of fossil fuels, deforestation, agriculture, construction, and manufacturing. And UN data indicates that the Earth's average temperature is projected to rise by up to 3 degrees Celsius by the end of the century, and that's if we continue on our current path. So if we don't take action to reduce these greenhouse gas emissions, like carbon, for example, the impacts of climate change are going to become more severe and, more importantly, irreversible. So our mandate as an industry has to be to decarbonise construction and manufacturing. I don't think this is any major secret now, but the built environment accounts for around 40% of global carbon emissions. So understanding and managing embodied carbon, which is the carbon footprint of materials and construction processes, is critical to achieving the net zero targets that we're all aiming for. So for those of you that may not even know what embodied carbon is, embodied carbon encompasses all emissions before a building becomes operational throughout its life cycle, from cradle to grave. So stored carbon, on the other hand, represents carbon locked away in natural materials, offering a form of temporary sequestration. Now, the RICS Professional Standard version 2, that establishes a unified methodology for assessing whole life carbon across buildings. It introduces enhanced clarity on biogenic carbon accounting, that is, measuring carbon stored in materials, and emphasizes transparency and consistency across all project stages. If you've never seen a life cycle assessment before, if we were to visualize it, this is probably what it looks like. You might be getting asked to do this by your own customers, and that could be for compliance reasons, or you just have your own sustainability goals or strategy that you're looking to achieve, and this is what it might visually look like for you. So it's a very standardized process which follows a number of ISO and EN standards that you can see here. And under RICS version 2, measurement spans across 4 main modules, and you can see 3 of those here. So we have A1 to A5, which is your products and construction stages, B1 to B7, which is your use stage, so maintenance, repair, energy, water, that kind of stuff. C1 to C4, which is your end of life, deconstruction, waste, processing and disposal. And then the one that you can't see here is D, which is beyond the system boundary. So we don't normally go as far as that, but life cycle assessments can do that. And that's focused on reuse, recovery and recycling benefits. So the ISOs really are the baseline life cycle assessments, and the EN numbers, so EN 15978 specifically focuses on buildings, and then EN 15804 is for building products. So that's basically the gold standard LCA, and you might know that as an environmental product declaration, or somebody's asked you for an EPD. So stored carbon must be accounted for transparently. So RICS version 2 specifies that carbon stored in materials such as timber is included in early life cycle stages, but released at end of life when the carbon returns to the atmosphere. So this just ensures that biogenic storage is not double counted as a permanent reduction, but recognized as part of a dynamic carbon balance. One click, what we do is simplify that compliance with RICS version 2 by providing a validated automated platform to measure both embodied and stored carbon. Our software connects directly with EPD databases, ensuring that you get high quality, transparent data for all materials and processes. And it helps people that are using us at the moment visualize impacts across the life cycle. We have built-in benchmarking, so project teams can compare performance, identify hotspots, and make low carbon design decisions early in the process. I mean, you might recognize in the middle section there, so RICS is obviously in there, but BREEAM might be something that you may be needing to attain, or you want to get into a project that has BREEAM or levels, or if you're doing infrastructure, PAS 2080, and we cover all of those. So what does that look like? Well, if you're building an LCA, specifically in our tool, it might look something like this. So hopefully you can see this video moving. I'm not going to build an entire LCA for you because we'll be here for longer than the 10 minutes that I've got. But I've got a project here that we've got 3 different options for, and 3 different versions of the building. And what we're doing is we're just going to add a product into something that's already been built out, just to see what that looks like. And that in turn, we then report on to RICS or into a BREEAM assessment, for example. So you can see here we're entering a timber product, and we're going to choose a timber product from our materials compass, which is the data we have, so over 500,000 data sets. And you can see here we're picking something that's local, so it picks something that's local to you. Of course, we're in the UK, and then we're going to enter the amount into this life cycle assessment. What's cool about this is that you're able to then click on the little question mark and it'll bring up the details of the product that you've actually put in there. So this is a real product, Jordanson Timber. If anyone's here from Johnson, congratulations. So a bit of free advertising for you, but you can see here, this is an EPD. So it's an EN15 ASO4 plus A2. And you can see all the relevant data on the screen in front of you. You can also compare products against each other. And then the key here is that you want your results to then put through to your RICS version 2 assessment. So now you can see the results. So this one's specifically for a RICS version 2 professional standard. And again, if you scroll down a little bit here, you'll be able to see some of the reporting. I'm going to show you a little bit more about that very shortly. But really, it's as simple as that to enter your products onto the tool. And ultimately, we'll start to look at what the reporting actually looks like towards the end of this presentation. But the goal isn't just about compliance, right? So it's about informed decision making as well. So of course, using something like RICS and RICS aligned methodologies with something like OneClick, project teams identify material substitutions and design efficiencies, and they get to reuse opportunities that cut embodied carbon before construction even begins. So early design decisions have the highest impact on embodied carbon. And when you start to bring together digital tools and the RICS alignment, you get this actionable insights. And of course, then you can also comply with things like LETI, the GLA requirements, and also UK GBC frameworks. Adopting the RICS standard through OneClick ensures comparability, accountability, and credibility. And that's obviously key for reporting and net zero strategies. And as we're talking about reporting, you can see here just an example of one of the charts that's sometimes used as part of those reports, a bubble chart there for you. Another example of one here that people tend to use is a Sankey diagram. It seems to be very popular right now. And of course, you can have all sorts. So you can have stacked bar charts and then even charts that look like this. But ultimately, what people are using is this. So this is what a finished RICS version 2 report would look like. So once you're happy with your life cycle, your project, or your building, it'll produce this at the click of a button. So here you can see the life cycle stages A1 to A5, and of course there's the C1 to C3 for reuse in there as well. There's a few tabs here, I think may have been cut off by the video, but essentially this report is generated quickly in the format expected for your reporting, and it's quick and easy to complete your assessment and add it to your evidence at whatever stage you are of the project. So I don't want to take too much time. So just to summarize, measuring embodied carbon and stored carbon under RICS version 2 offers a consistent foundation for low carbon design. And what we do is we just turn that methodology into action. So we're enabling designers, developers, and contractors to quantify, compare, and cut carbon emissions effectively through some of the outputs that you've been able to see here today.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, no problem. Here's my details if anyone wants to reach out. Thank you.
Great stuff, Andrew. I'll leave it on there for a second just so you can sort of get your phones out and stuff, because I know it always takes a bit of time. Just a quick one, Andrew. So as part of that report, it will have a biogenic carbon, stored carbon figure somewhere in that report that we can then, or the user can then pass on to the next stage that we're going to talk about now. Brilliant.
Absolutely, it's part of the LCA, yeah.
Great stuff. Thanks, Andrew. We'll get back to you in a second. So if you've got any questions for Andrew, get them in the chat. I know we've got one or two in there at the moment already, so get them in there. In the meantime, I'm going to hand over to Dougal and Rachel from Grown in Britain. So Dougal Driver's the CEO of Grown in Britain, and Rachel's the business manager. They're going to talk about the development of a stored carbon certification system that we're and TDUK are actually inputting into that as well. To try and see if we can develop that so that you can actually certify the amount of stored carbon in your building. So over to you, Dougal and Rachel.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you very much. Rachel's going to share a short slide pack, and I'm going to talk over that. So Rachel, you can start sharing. Thank you very much. So Grown in Britain's a not-for-profit that certifies the homegrown supply chain. We're category A timber procurement policy, so at the highest level, elevated only 2 weeks ago, actually, after a rigorous process in recent months, alongside FSC and PEFC. So one thing we also do, though, in addition, is that we certify provenance. The range of things we do is on that slide there now. We're here to support the sector in many ways. So we've collaborated with many people, for example, to launch a British quality wild venison scheme because there's too many deer eating the trees, and we want more timber to come through to biogenic products. So we need to be able to manage our woods more sustainably. So if you're a meat eater, do eat more venison. We also, the plant healthy certification there is a biosecurity certification for plants being moved around and traded across the world. That's an organizational certification. So, but we're mainly chain of custody and forests. We move on, please. So, and we're keen to lead the industry through with others, obviously TDK and others, and the timber and construction roadmaps that exist in the different nations. And we've been focusing on carbon storage. The reason is that carbon in the UK in sequestration terms in the forest, there's things like the Woodland Carbon Code, which is quite highly regulated. It's a voluntary code, but we lose sight of the value of that carbon once it comes into storage. So it's a nice segue from Andrew and how we finished up there with Charlie's question. About 2 years ago, we wanted to work out how we could support the sector in this, and as we're a certification body, we sounded out the industry, and that's what we're doing. We're in the middle of writing a certification, and this next slide would show a bit more about that, what that certification looks like. So we're calling our certification the Biogenic Stored Carbon Quotient, and you can read on the screen what it's intending to do, which is, I think, is hopefully quite obvious. Timber Finance are following us on this webinar today, and we've been talking to them for over 6 months and learning from what they're doing in Europe. I think it's fair to say that, and Timber Finance might confirm or deny this, but that not many people around the globe actually are looking at how you can valorize, monetize, and certify the units from stored carbon in buildings. And as I'll come to on a later slide, the IPCC permanency and details around how long timber is stored for are not particularly helpful unless you have a certification scheme that can allow you to actually be much more bespoke about what you're trying to achieve. And I'll come on to that a little bit later, but there's a few more details there. We're a not-for-profit trusted certification scheme, so it's really important to be in this market in order for trades to take place. So building on the LCA work that Andrew's talking about, being able to have credible measuring, and we come in to put that together into a certification scheme that we can audit against. We are looking to start doing that next year in 2026 on real projects. I'm hoping to finish the writing of this by the end of this year. You can see that we're adding in social value metrics to this as well. We're working with partners in the social value field. We're developing very sophisticated systems, actually, alongside based on government TOMS metrics. UK has something called TOMS, which is UK backed, but we're working with Captivate and in order to really sophisticate that and add a big social value element to the measure of carbon stored. And also we're going to link through to the internationally accepted biodiversity protocols as well. So nature, recently the United Nations agreed to things across the world. So that might sound ambitious to have co-benefits of social and nature, but we've talked to the industry and they want that. They really want that attached to this biogenic stored carbon. You can read these. The TIC roadmap is a UK Gov-based document focused on the UK, but particularly cross government. The timber industrial strategy is Welsh. It's the Welsh government's new, probably even, yes, it's probably only less than a year old since it was announced earlier this year. Really positive strategy for Wales, actually. So there are reason for sharing these is there are national strategies to underpin. It's good timing to do a certification scheme. We've obviously got the framework from Europe. There's an ISO now about biogenic stored carbon, and there are these policy documents that back it up as well. So the timing is good. As Charlie mentioned, TDUK are helping us. They're at the very heart of this, including Charlie himself. Morwenna Spears from Bangor University, who's co-authored the ISO for biogenic stored carbon, is on our writing group, as are our own technical partners at Supply Chain Insights and our own technical internal team. And the Technical Advisory Committee, we've pulled these people together, as you can see below. Some are helping us with resources, which is fantastic. A real shout out to those people listed under that committee. But what's really interesting there is that we have financial consultants and others, if you like, from the trading city side of things, the corporate world, the sort of high integrity side, and then not that they're low integrity, but we have from the supply side in terms of, say, the Forestry Commission or Scottish Forestry, but then the tier one contractors. It's really interesting to see how these people debate how the certification scheme might be structured and how to make it feasible, accessible, totally robust and rigorous, and yet something that can actually valorize units that can then be traded, so that it's not a certification that isn't used, it's a certification that actually can be applied to all kinds of construction projects, whether they're commercial, residential, and indeed fit out as well. There's a little flow chart for those that do their learning through graphics like me. Always like a flow chart. Hopefully it speaks for itself. I'll draw your eye to the black diamond in the middle there, which is the biogenic stored carbon quotient, which is where we sit to pull the things together from the left-hand side of this diagram. The project is in fact the application. They will run through. Our vision at the moment is that we will audit a provisional design in order for the client, the applicant, it might be a project manager, a tier one contractor, it could be a designer, an architect, in order for that to be able to see and quantify what the benefits might be from using more timber, using different types of structures and timbers and systems. And then we will audit and verify at the completion of the project, so that there'll be a two-stage process to our auditing. We've mentioned timber finance there on the right-hand side, and Sol will be able to cover off what that might look like from his particular, and I imagine he might mention the Vera methodology that they're working with. There you see Captivate, the social value that's in there, and you can see those blue boxes have the social and nature co-benefits. Thank you. So as you might know, there are sort of standard 3 tiers within the IPCC greenhouse gas inventory. Tier 1 follows the basic longevity figures from the IPCC, which for construction is 35 years. We truly believe that's underplayed, but of course it's an average. It's because some things some timber might be destroyed sooner, some might last longer, so it's a global average. And tier 2 and tier 3 is where we're going to really focus and add value by allowing and providing a certification system whereby the project can measure more accurately and state and claim what it feels the longevity could be through, say, bespoke systems. We know that many construction systems in timber would happily sign off against 80, 100 years, and we want to get that as long as possible. We have no prediction on what that might look like, other than we want to provide a facility whereby projects can, push beyond the very cautious, deliberately cautious averages from IPCC. And I think that might be the last slide. Just some contacts there. Charlie, you might leave that on the screen as well for us, in order for people might be able to observe it. We're very accessible on social media and through our website, and we're also very keen to talk direct to people if anyone wants to get in touch with us directly, should the Q&A not satisfy anyone's intrigue around Growing in Britain. Thank you very much, Charlie.
turn my mic on. There we go. Thanks, Dougal. Thanks, Rachel. Appreciate that. We'll got a few questions going through, but like I say, we'll leave them to the end, and we'll touch base on those in a second. So thanks a lot for that. Hopefully, you've had enough time to catch those contact details now, so we can hand over now to Sol. Sol is a carbon project manager at Timber Finance. So Sol's going to basically explain how we can maybe valorise that stored carbon in our buildings to be able to maybe help finance some of the building going forward, and explain what some of the stuff, hopefully what you're doing in Europe and stuff like that. So over to you. Thanks very much. Screen's on. You're on mute at the moment. Just start.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Little technical.
Here we go. That's it. We can hear you now. Thanks very much. Over to you, sir.
Okay. Thanks, Charlie, and thanks to Timber Development UK for the invite. I'm Naim Sol from Timber Finance. That is a company based in Switzerland with the mission of enabling timber buildings into the carbon markets. As Douglas said, there are not so many players in the game at the moment, but there are some, and today we're going to be explaining what's our approach. So I'm going to be talking about the methodology and the crediting process, and how can building owners benefit from the profit from the climate benefit of building with timber. So let's start with the methodology first. So when we talk about carbon markets, this is a slide that I always like to start with, because when we talk about global markets, the UN plays a central role, not only by setting the vision, but also by shaping the rules, the science, and ultimately the demand. Through agreements like the Kyoto Protocol or the Paris Agreement that I'm sure most of you have heard of, the UNFCCC created frameworks that guide both the compliance and voluntary carbon markets. Even initiatives that might look completely independent, such as ICROA or the SBTI, the Science-Based Targets, are rooted somehow in UN structures. This means that demand in carbon markets is not as diverse as in other commodities, and it largely depends on what the UN and its affiliated bodies deem acceptable. So let's go and talk a bit more in detail about what this methodology we are developing. First of all, we have to say that that's an ICROA endorsed methodology for engineered wood in construction that builds on the established carbon accounting principles while addressing new challenges like long-term storage and risk of reversal in buildings. Those two topics are especially sensitive if you are working in this field. From the start, we involved a broad group of stakeholders from carbon markets, academia, forestry, industry, other players from the built environment. They provided input on key concepts, helped us with technical hurdles and the overall designing in order to end up with a robust methodology. Okay, so what are we looking at exactly? So what we're quantifying is, on one side, the emission reductions. Those are the avoided emissions when a timbered building is compared to a conventional reinforced concrete structure. So we're talking about embodied emissions. And then we're also looking at the carbon removals. That's the biogenic carbon that is stored in timber itself. And it's measured against what would otherwise be stored in baseline wooden products like other wood-based panels, paper, cardboard, sunwood, energy wood, etc. Little status update before we continue. Last summer, we submitted a pre-public consultation draft to Vera, the carbon standard we're currently working with, and have received their feedback. And there are still some points we need to refine before the methodology can move forward. Our goal is to complete these revisions by the end of this year, and then launch the public consultation and the validation and verification body review. If all goes according to the plan, we expect final approval in the second quarter of 2026 and to start certifying projects in the third quarter. Key methodological features. There are five of them, being the first one, eligibility. We only include projects that use wood from sustainable sources, that guarantee long-term storage, that's 100 years for us, and that offer a valid substitution for conventional materials like concrete or steel. We are also setting a minimum threshold of 300 cubic meters of wood per building to ensure material significance. Then the second key point would be additionality. Project has to go beyond regulatory requirements, face a clear investment barrier, and remain below. So it has to be located in a place where the timber quota is under 20%. Then we have to model two baselines, one for emission reductions. That's what we call the mineral twin. That's an equivalent reinforced concrete structure. And then another baseline for the carbon removals, which is the alternative harvested wood products that would have been produced if that wood had been used as something other than an engineered wood product like the CLT or glulam or just a frame or frames of a for a timber building. Then the fourth key point would be leakages, that's transport demand shift and the upstream displacement that we are looking at. And the fifth one would be the monitoring, which would take place at the end of each grading period. And from our point of view, that's one of the most important things in order to ensure that the storage is still in place. Let's move to the second part of the deck. That's the crediting process. Why would real estate developers participate in such an initiative? Well, first of all, carbon credits can provide a financial incentive, helping to offset some of the higher upfront costs of timber construction. Then secondly, verified removals can support a strong sustainability narrative that would allow developers to credibly communicate climate benefits to investors, tenants, and the public. And third, it's about so strategic positioning and being an early mover, a front runner. Signals innovation and leadership in this ecosystem. Okay, now let's go through project development. I'll explain it in five steps. So first of all, once the building owner comes to us, we ask for the required data in order to undergo the calculations, being the most important documents or files, the delivery bills, and a 3D IFC model. Then we analyze the structural elements, identify them, characterize them, and once we have an Excel sheet with all those elements, then we can proceed to the creation of the baseline. So then we can do the translation from timber structure to reinforced concrete structure, and to calculate also the harvested wooden products for the carbon removals baseline. And the difference between those baselines and the project, taking into considerations the leakages that I mentioned before, that would be the final amount of tons that we would be crediting. And once we have that, then we could develop the project design document, the PDD. Very fast, the crediting process. The building owner, that's our business model. Building owner would come to us. We would develop the PDD, send it to a third-party auditor that is verified by the carbon standard, in this case Vera. They would validate the PDD. The carbon standard would archive it would register in their archives, and then we would and then South Pole, our partner, the carbon broker, would generate the verified carbon units and find a buyer in the voluntary carbon market. With the retributions from those credits, we would share them between the building owner, who would be taking most of it, and then another part, like around 30%, 35%, would be split between the forester and the project developers. The fact that the forester gets a part of this income is it's a unique value proposition from timber finance, and it's a way we have to support the forestry sector. And then to end up with how do the building owners, how can they use those verified carbon units? So depending on the ownership structure, developers or building owners can either sell their credits to a third party buyers in the voluntary market, or that's what it's called, offsetting, or use them for insetting, for instance, in investment portfolios that aim for net zero operations. That's all from my side. Thanks for your attention. Also, here some yeah, some contact details from our side, and looking forward to the Q&A session. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Liam. I say it's a complicated subject, this, and thanks for sort of trying to explain that. I'm sure we'll have some questions coming through. I've seen a few come up so far already, so we'll head straight into those questions now. I'll give you a break for a second, though, just on these, and we'll go back to Andrew on the first ones, I think. Andrew, question come through. Obviously, you mentioned there that OneClick has a number of EPDs in the system. The question says, how frequently are they updated? Is that constantly? Is that tied in with some other system? And what about products without an EPD? How do you cover those products that haven't got an EPD?
Okay. So in terms of frequency of updating EPDs, there's two answers to this. So the first one is we regularly find products that have got new EPDs, and they're uploaded onto the system every couple of weeks. So our material database is growing on a regular basis. So that's just done automatically through various systems that we've got. In terms of updates, if that question means updating EPDs as in trying to improve them, then that's up to our customers, although we do have quite a few customers that come back to us and they might find their products are now being measured against similar products, and they end up maybe losing out on a tender, for example, because their product's not deemed as good as the previous product. So I guess that's two answers to that question. Hopefully I've answered it.
Yeah.
And then in terms of what about materials without EPD? So there's a few materials without EPDs in our software, but the reality is that we're trying to build the best LCAs. So we're not something like NBS where you can find every material pretty much. Our ultimate goal is to build life cycle assessments for buildings. So we don't have the data that's realistic for products that don't have EPDs, because an EPD is third-party verified. So we trust in the third-party verification as the answer to that question. Hopefully that's answered it.
Hopefully, I know that we send over our weighted average data to your guys as well. So I'm assuming that's in there somewhere for, where you don't know what product you're going to use, you just know it's a bit of plywood or a bit of softwood. You've obviously got that data in there as well, and I'll whether we can put a link in somewhere, Liam, to the EPD database, if you could do that, because I can't find the chat button. So whether you can stick that in and stick the link to our EPD database, that might help some people as well about finding data. So hopefully that covers a few of the questions that we had in on that bit. As far as how could I think what it's trying to explain is, can you collaborate with more than one part of the design team to build that whole life carbon assessment? I think what it's saying is, by the sound of the question saying, can different parties actually feed into that whole life carbon assessment on the OneClick LCA tool?
Yeah, so the answer to this one is shorter than my last answer, and the answer is yes. So that's exactly what's happening. So multidisciplinary consultants, construction companies, etc. If you're doing a BREEAM, for example, you're doing LCAs at various stages, and those are being passed along. So yeah, absolutely.
Great stuff. So moving on to the grown in Britain and possibly Naim's as well. So one of the questions: how is double counting avoided? A customer will already be quantifying the biogenic carbon in the LCA. Won't this be double counting that carbon?
So you could go first, Charlie. You might want to come in on this one as well, because I'll just talk about certification from a grown in Britain perspective. Is that it's partly our job as a certification body to make sure that doesn't happen, and we will absolutely validate that. That will be our role to do that. There are other risks of double counting, duplication, overstating things as a benchmark point, or we will absolutely be making sure those stones are turned over. But in terms of the technical double counting, I'll hand that over to Sol, and potentially Charlie, you might want to come in.
Well, the way we will avoid double counting is with the baseline of the baseline in the carbon removals where we are calculating all the biogenic carbon that would have been stored in the harvested wood products that would have been produced instead of the engineered wooden products that are used for buildings. And then, yeah, the difference between baseline and project, that's what we credit for.
I think that answers one of the other questions as well there, Naim. So that sort of covers the additionality question. I think we're looking at the additionality in this process, aren't we? I think so. It's what's over and above what would normally the timber might normally have been used for, is where we're coming from. Tricky subject that, but that's something. The idea being, I think, when the double count is that we, very much looking at making sure that doesn't happen going forward.
Just before as you read those other questions, to pick one out, if I may, Charlie, on the baselining, it was interesting at the Built by Nature conference last week in London that some of the examples of how this has been done elsewhere in case study terms, people were baselining a kind of how I would have built it. And I think one of the roles Growing in Britain has moving forward in terms of monitoring, not just provisional design, final design, but some monitoring, is to check that those baselines are realistic and there's no greenwashing there, because those baselines, modern methods of construction are modern today. They're more modern in 5 years' time. We will continue to make sure that baseline is reflective of what is a template build, if you like, whatever your phraseology wants. So it's important to constantly be able to answer that question rigorously.
Yeah, and we're doing some other work in the background to look at how much carbon and how much biogenic material is stored in harvested wood products each year as well. So we've got data on what's actually coming into the market each year with TDUK and the government stats on timber imports and timber production. We've also got data from, for example, the Wood Recyclers Association in the UK showing what's being processed as a waste material, i.e. coming out of that harvested wood products bulk. And there's obviously a net then figure that's an addition each year. So as long as we don't go over that net addition, that will avoid that double count as well. So there's a few checks and balances that we're doing in the background to make sure that we don't double count that additionality going forward. So great, thanks, guys. The question I think this is for Dougal and Rachel. This one is: are you measuring an absolute value of the final biogenic carbon stored, or a relative one during the design process? And I think from your presentation, a bit of both. It's an initial look at what carbon could be stored, but actually what you'll be certifying is the actual final biogenic carbon stored in that building at the end of at handover, in effect. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I think something that Sol mentioned is you have a design that you would assess initially, because obviously an architect company would be designing a timber building, and that you assess at that point. So you've got a figure that is what you're aiming for, and then once the building's completed, then you take an actual assessment of what's there, and you can compare and see whether what was planned is what's been delivered.
Great stuff. This sort of overlaps, I think, between timber finance and Growing in Britain. This one, I think, what safeguards are in place to ensure project teams responsibly use timber? For instance, they don't over-design timber structures just to increase the carbon storage and carbon credits. So, great question, that one. I think that's something we're definitely looking at within this to make sure it's an efficient design as part of the process, isn't it? Is the key answer there.
Yeah, and if necessary, we could build into a certification a penalty for over. You could easily build in metrics, I think, to be able to control that. And the certificate, Growing in Britain certification, is very dynamic and live. We have a technical panel that oversees certification, and we could convene that panel within a few months if we felt there was something coming through the auditing processes that was just setting off alarm bells. We could change the standard to update it to ensure that those sorts of things weren't taking place. it would be odd if somebody was trying to skew the pitch that way, but if they were, we can audit that out. We're very good at spotting people doing all kinds of things with all kinds of products through certification, and our auditors are one step ahead of the game.
Thanks, Dougal. Thanks, Dougal. Yeah, I think absolutely there will be checks and balances in there. Is basically the answer to that, to make sure that doesn't happen. As far as just probably more, this may sort of more go into timber finance area. How does selling the carbon credits from a building affect any planning requirements for carbon? Isn't this double counting? Can you only sell credits for carbon saved above the planning requirements? So I think it sort of ties in with what you're saying. I think it's around the additionality question, that one again, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understood the question. Sorry, can you repeat?
Yeah, how does selling carbon credits from a building affect could selling? I suppose the question could be, could selling carbon credits from the building affect the planning requirements for carbon? Not sure they would. I think it's, you know, because the way I was, we were talking about with Frank on the previous call, is that we've got separate accounts here. We've got, in effect, a building account that's totally separate from any national carbon accounting account, and we're just looking at that from an individual building point of view.
Can I jump in? Just trading with integrity, the trading of these things will pick up on anything like that. If you take the biodiversity as an example, in the UK, we've got something called biodiversity net gain, which is a planning condition on a planning development that might have an impact on biodiversity. And you need to offset that negative impact plus 10, I think the minimum might be 10, but I think a lot of tier 1 contractors and house builders aim for 20% uplift when they offset somewhere else. So you clearly can't claim that biodiversity net gain credit that you've had to do for a planning condition, say on your TNFD accounts for biodiversity, which is your corporate nature account as a corporate in the global world, because that would be double counting. In my view, as a chartered environmentalist, in my view, that would be double counting because you've had to do it for a planning thing. I would just think that the same logical approach should apply to all kinds of offsetting units, claims, etc. Whereas if you've had to do it for another reason, you really can't claim it for a separate reason.
Great stuff. Just moving down some of the questions here, because we're running short of time. I think a key question, is one for you, Naim. Who's applying for the carbon credits? And I think you sort of covered that in your diagram after this question came up, which is generally the building owner, I think you're looking at. And I think the other part of that question is, what do you think the market value of the stored carbon would be? Have you started looking at what the value of that might be at the moment?
So there's two types of carbon units we have after our accrediting process. The biogenic carbon, the carbon removal credits would have a value between 1 and 200, that being realistic, and some more optimistical estimations set it to up to 300. But all our calculations usually are with 150 euros a ton.
So on that, so we're looking at around 150 euros a ton is what we're sort of aiming for. But it might be either side of that. Obviously, it's going to depend on the market at the time, isn't it, Naim? So these are again are only estimates that we can look at the moment. Thanks very much. So the other one was how do these methods fit in with the EU certification of carbon storage in products? So this is the new European certification side. That's probably one for you, Rachel and Dougal, to just say how that fits in, how the certification scheme fits in with that.
Yeah, so I think this is the new ISO. I've just popped an answer in the chat. So 13391 is a new series of ISOs that came out in March this year. Morwenna Spears, who's on our writing group, was instrumental in developing that. So that, from an organisation's point of view, would allow you to assess the stored carbon in the products that you were manufacturing, processing.
Yeah, well, they're just picking up on the EU. I think maybe there was the CRCF framework that was being referred to there in the EU as well. So both the ISO and that framework are absolutely intrinsic. I mean, I'm sure it's the same with timber finance. We know timber finance well, and in a way, these things are all aligned. It's hard not to be aligned with them. With a very welcome regulatory instruments, actually, because it legitimizes the push we're trying to actually bring this thing to life and create units and then certify them and trade them. So yeah, it's very, very much aligned with those. I mean, the European framework is quite high level, of course, as are things like ICROA principles. These things are quite high level. Some of the questions come further down as you dig in. But so yeah, absolutely fully compliant with those things. And Sol, you might want to confirm that as well from timber finance's perspective.
Well, I also understood that Charlie was referring to the CRCF. We have participated even in some focus groups to give our opinion and to contribute to the shaping of this methodology together with the other players in the Netherlands, France, and Germany. So yes, of course, there are points that maybe we understand in different way, but it aligns. Yeah, but it's aligning in most of the fundamental topics. Yeah.
Great stuff. A question, I think, for Audie, really, probably the last one now because we're getting near the end. And it's sort of a few people are asking about the building life, and you mentioned the 35 years in your scheme name, and obviously Andrew, how obviously the RSS sort of talk about a 60-year life and things like that for a building. So what's your thoughts on sort of the building life, how that's calculated, and why it's those are the figures that you're using for building life? So maybe Andrew, what do you, starting off yourself, what do you think is are you seeing as a realistic building life that's been used in One Click Sol?
It depends on the scheme, to be honest with you. So yeah, if we think about RICS, then of course we go with the RICS standard, so that's 60 years. Other schemes have slightly less, but yeah, in terms of what we do in the UK, it's definitely the RICS one that we stand by on that one, which is the 60 years.
Name, what's your on the 35 years? Where's that 30? Can you explain where that 35 years comes from within your?
Actually, ours is not 35.
Oh, sorry.
35 is the EU CRCF is taking 35 years, and that would be one of the points we are not agreeing on. We think that 35 is it's a very conservative service life to take, and that we could be a bit more generous on that, or not generous, just more realistic. What we are trying to look at is we are trying to take into consideration also the end of life of timber, of the timber elements that are going to be used, and also the possible end of life treatment. So we are currently aiming for 100, which might be a bit optimistic, and that's one of the points that we have to refine in our methodology before it's done. So we might end up going a bit down to 80, but we think that it's important to keep this number high in order to keep the value of the credits high, according to the climate benefit that timber buildings are bringing.
Yeah, Agreed. I think it's one of that. I think that's one of going to be the ongoing question going forward. Is what is that life? How long is that timber? Staying in the buildings. And I know Adrian's asked a question, and they're using some information on a new project that they're working on, which is looking at some Danish data, which is quite good. So there's a lot of sources out there and a lot of questions around how long it's going to be. I think we're going to have to end it there. We're over time now. We're now 2 minutes past 2. So I know there's a lot of questions. Apologies if we didn't get to your question, but we had so many questions come through, which is great. Thanks very much for that, for our audience there, for sending those questions in. Really appreciate you asking those questions. Really need to thank our panel as well. Dougal's had to shoot off because we're at the time, but thanks to Dougal, Rachel, Naim, and Andrew. Thanks very much for your time today. Really appreciate you giving up the hour today and joining our webinar. Really good to hear from you guys, and thanks to our audience for turning up. So really hope you enjoyed this presentation, and we'll be in contact with the next ones going through soon. So thanks very much. We'll let you go. And we'll catch up with you on our next webinar. So thanks very much and see you soon.